Most individuals will never learn about this until it's already too late. Not because the details are hidden away, not because it's too difficult to grasp, but because the kinds of developments that quietly alter millions of lives rarely go viral online or appear as headline news. They unfold in courtrooms, expressed through legal wording that most people never bother to read. And by the time the average American notices that something has shifted, the financial impact is already in motion. That is precisely what just occurred. The Supreme Court of the United States has delivered a unanimous 9-0 decision. Every justice, from the most conservative to the most liberal, arrived at the exact same conclusion, and what they ruled has permanently altered how retirement functions across the nation. Not for a limited time, not in just one state, not for a select group, but permanently and nationwide. If you have a pension, contribute to a 401k, receive Social Security, or have ever made financial plans assuming retirement rules would remain in place when you needed them, this ruling directly affects you. The reason this matters so much right now, before the headlines fully catch up, is that the protection it introduces does not automatically apply itself to your situation. You need to understand it first. A Supreme Court decision is only useful to those who know how to use it. So, let's break down what really happened, why 9 justices who rarely agree found common ground here, and why legal experts are already describing this as one of the most impactful retirement rulings in the past half-century. Before that, you need to understand what was truly at stake, because this case did not begin as a historic turning point. It started with one individual refusing to accept that the government could change the rules after the game had already been played. Imagine dedicating 30 years of your life based on certain promises. Not casual promises, but legal ones. Promises written into policy, embedded into the retirement system you contributed to with every paycheck, year after year. You made life decisions based on those guarantees. You chose a career in public service because the pension formula made it worthwhile. You stayed in a state you might have otherwise left because its retirement tax structure supported your financial future. You planned your savings, your retirement age, your investments, all built on a system the government itself designed and encouraged you to trust. Then one day, without your input, without your approval, and without considering the decades of planning you had already completed, the government changed the rules. Not just for future participants, but retroactively for people already deeply invested in the system, people who realistically had no chance to start over. That is what happened to the retiree at the center of this case, and that is what the Supreme Court was asked to evaluate. The question was not whether governments can update laws. They can. It was not whether retirement systems can be reformed. They can. The real question was much more precise and far more powerful. Can a government alter retirement rules in a way that directly harms people who structured their entire financial lives around the previous system? The unanimous answer from all 9 justices was no. Not unless the government meets an exceptionally high constitutional standard. Not unless it can prove the change is justified enough to override decades of real-life planning built on the original law. To understand why this matters so much, you need to understand the key legal principle at the center of the case. The justices focused on something known as reliance. It's a legal term, but the idea is simple. When you make major life decisions based on an existing rule, when you invest years and money into a system because of how it operates, you are relying on that system. And when the government creates a system specifically designed to shape long-term behavior, encouraging saving and planning decades ahead, it cannot later remove that foundation without accountability. That is what reliance means. And what the Supreme Court has now declared unanimously is that retirement planning is one of the strongest examples of reliance in American law. Retirement is not a short-term choice. It is not something people easily adjust every few years. It is a lifelong commitment built on the expectation that the rules will remain stable enough for the plan to succeed. Before this ruling, states had broad authority to change retirement-related laws. They could adjust pension formulas, introduce new taxes on retirement income, or raise the age for full benefits. They often justified these actions by arguing that governments need flexibility to manage budgets and respond to economic conditions. On the surface, that argument makes sense. But it overlooked something essential: the real people affected by those changes. The teacher who spent decades in a classroom because the pension made a lower salary worthwhile. The firefighter who stayed in a demanding career because retirement benefits made it financially sustainable. The retiree who relocated across the country for tax advantages, only to see those benefits disappear shortly after. These are not hypothetical scenarios. These are real lives. What the Supreme Court has now said is that those decisions, those years of planning, and that reliance on government-created systems deserve constitutional protection. This is where the ruling becomes truly groundbreaking. The court didn't just say reliance matters, it created a three-part constitutional test that states must now satisfy before changing retirement laws in ways that harm people who relied on them. More importantly, the court shifted the burden of proof. Previously, retirees had to prove that a policy change was unfair, often requiring legal resources they didn't have. The state held the advantage. Now the situation is reversed. The presumption starts in favor of the individual. The state must prove that its changes are justified despite the reliance people placed on the original rules. This shift is not minor. In legal disputes, whoever carries the burden of proof often determines the outcome. By placing that burden on the government, the court has fundamentally changed the balance of power. For the first time, retirement decisions made by millions of Americans are being recognized as constitutionally protected reliance. However, it's important to stay realistic. This ruling does not freeze retirement laws permanently. States can still make changes. What has changed is the standard they must meet. The bar is now significantly higher. This is not a guarantee, it is a safeguard, and like any safeguard, it only benefits those who understand it. In the next part, we focus on who benefits most. Public employees are the first group directly impacted: teachers, police officers, firefighters, nurses, and government workers across the country. These individuals often accepted lower pay in exchange for stable retirement benefits. When those benefits were later reduced, it created serious consequences. This ruling now gives them stronger legal ground to challenge such changes. The second group includes retirees who moved based on state tax policies. Many people relocate in retirement to reduce taxes on income like pensions or Social Security. When states later change those policies, it can significantly impact their finances. Under this ruling, such decisions may now qualify as protected reliance. The third group is working Americans still saving for retirement. Those contributing to 401ks or IRAs based on current rules are also protected. Retirement planning is an ongoing process, and each contribution represents reliance on the system in place at that time. The three-part test determines how protection applies. First, did you make financial decisions based on existing rules? Second, would the change cause real harm? Third, can the government justify that harm with a strong enough reason? Only if all conditions are met can changes move forward. So what should you do now? Start documenting everything? Save records of tax policies, pension details, and account statements. These may become critical evidence. Speak with a financial advisor who understands these changes. Review your retirement plans carefully. For public employees, compare your pension terms with any recent changes. This ruling highlights a deeper truth. Retirement security has always depended on trust. Trust that systems will remain stable. For years, that trust lacked real enforcement. This decision changes that. It declares that reliance is not just an expectation, but a constitutional interest. The story is only beginning. States will respond in different ways. New legal battles will define the limits of this ruling. But one thing is clear: the era of quietly changing retirement rules without consequence is over. What you do now matters. Those who understand and act on this will be better prepared. Knowledge here is not just power, it is protection. Share this with anyone planning for retirement, because financial realities don't wait for awareness. The Supreme Court has spoken unanimously. The message is clear. Retirement rules can no longer be changed without accountability. This is a long-awaited shift, and it belongs to every American who planned, saved, and trusted the system to hold.